think the days now of lengthy implementations of software projects, well into the hundreds, if not thousands of days to set up a professional service, to set up print management software or capture workflows, I think they're kind of long gone now, and the customers aren't going to accept that. And so they want to be able to turn the technology on within hours and days, not months and years. And I think there's also an expectation around flexibility, that they want to be able to scale up and scale down as needed, move things around as needed, but also flexibility in payment options, to be able to only pay for those things that they use. And so as you reflect on technology that's required for that, then you align the customer expectations with the technology. And today, customers really want to focus on their key challenges of cybersecurity or control and reducing costs, hybrid working practices. But they want the solution to be up and running quickly, with the least amount of fuss, and they want flexible kind of payment options around that.
Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Noella Fernandez, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Simon Hill, Managing Director of EMEA and APAC at Vasion. Today we'll be discussing cloud technologies and Vasion's approach to cloud across both print and capture. So welcome, Simon. It's great to have you on the show today.
Hi there, good morning. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Yes, so I know you've been in the industry for some time and you've got a lot of experience on the capture side. So could you maybe tell us a bit about your career journey and your role at Vasion today?
Yeah, certainly. So at Vasion, I'm the Managing Director for EMEA and Asia Pac for the SaaS company Vasion. Some of you may know it as being PrinterLogic, and I'll talk about that a little later on. In terms of my career so far, I've always kind of been interested in technology and how technology can improve the current state of how we are doing things. Following my degree in design and technology, I decided it would be good to join some technology companies and to get into that marketplace, as I think technology keeps you interested. It's always changing, and so it's a good marketplace to get into. I probably wasn't intelligent enough to get in to become like a full engineer, so I decided I would go and try and sell the technology instead. And I got some advice from a family friend at the time who was at IBM. This is in the mid to kind of late 90s. And he gave me the advice to, if you want to get into sales, go to a company who has got really good sales training. And he made a recommendation of IBM at the time, and also Xerox were also good at the time. So I hunted around and found an opportunity in the Xerox channel. And indeed, that did give me some excellent basic training, which was really good. And some of you, I know some of the listeners may be running from the UK, may remember the Wokefield Park Training Centre down just south of Reading, and you went down there for 2 weeks, and that was a really good introduction into technology and into how to sell that technology, and so that was good. At that time, in the late 90s, photocopiers were changing into being on the network, as we know, and so you had to understand more around networking from that perspective, and we started to compete with printer manufacturers, not just the traditional copy manufacturers. So you have to start thinking ahead of the game and how to sell against those. I had some good success there. I then moved to EMC, which was at the other end of the infrastructure. You've got print and peripherals on one side, EMC doing back-end storage systems. And that was a good eye-opener for me to understand where all this data was going to be held and stored and retrieved from there. I had a really good time there, and I thought that was an excellent job for me. Unfortunately, it was a bit more short-lived as the dot-com bubble then burst, and particularly in the telco sector where I was part of. And unfortunately, it was kind of the restructure needed to happen. It was last in, first out. And so I was made redundant from that particular job, which I thought was a brilliant job. So I was a bit disappointed about that. And as I was looking back, actually, I thought it was quite a tough time because at the time we'd recently bought a new house and had our first child. But then I realized then that in work environments, you really need to take ownership of your own situation and refocus and use what skills you've got to try to progress and overcome those challenges that does all happen to us time and time again. I went to then the European IT reseller, SCC, and that really gave me an understanding of IT managed services. And I went there as an overlay person to look at the printing side of things within that. And I could see at the time that they were starting doing managed services around the desktop. around the seat, if you like, so that the desktops, the devices, and everything is required for that environment, and put a whole service around it. I then observed that, but then started to get into managed print services, what we now call managed print services, document services, and wanted to try and drive that. This is 2002, and there wasn't much software around then, and so we had to go hunting for auditing software, for print management software, and we tried to look to do audits and right-size the fleet, look at network faxing software, how will that integrate into a print room, and into the help desk that we would put on site, and feed and water the devices and all of that kind of good stuff that we now know today is fairly standard. But back then, that was in 2002, we went out and we got all of that stuff in and able to build a managed service back then. And so that was 20 years ago. It was interesting that it probably took another 8 to 10 years after that before that became mainstream within the MPS world. From that broad kind of IT managed services, I then went very specific and joined a very small company, a US-based company. I was the third employee in the UK, a company called eCopy. And they had at the time, I thought, some brilliant capture software. And that then grew, and it was really good fun, just running around the country with the three of us, building up this software business, working with all of the manufacturers, to a point where that got acquired by Nuance. And at that stage, I'd moved from salesperson, we built the teams into a sales manager and sales director role. And then Nuance acquired 5 other software companies within that kind of 2-year period, all print management and scanning software. And so that was a really interesting time in terms of my progression as a kind of manager, to integrate these 5 companies into one, the people, the processes, the products. Bear in mind, we would compete against each other a lot of the time before this time, so we had to kind of iron all of that out and really focus on what we need to do as a company. So that was a really good, interesting time there. After 12 years at Nuance, I decided a new challenge and opportunity came along for me to go really into the high-end production capture marketplace at Kodak Alaris. And that was a good experience to really understand the digitization of, people trying to do millions of documents a day, such as the prescription service and National Archives and all of these large digitization projects, and gave me an insight into a new set of partners, being the BPOs and shared service centers at that kind of really high end. So that was good. And after 5 successful years of that, an opportunity came up. I started to talk to the CEO at Vasion. Again, going back to a smaller software-based company, say now with great opportunities to try and develop across EMEA and across Asia Pac, to try and do something special in this company again and grow this business. Some might say that I've kind of taken a bit of a step back into print and capture, but this is definitely different. And this is definitely the next generation of print and capture, with workflow enterprise content management as well, all in a cloud-based software as a service solution, which is great and very exciting. I do want to say, actually, just to kind of close in this little bit, I suppose, that I've met some really brilliant people in this industry, and a lot I would consider as being really good friends. And the benefit of being in a similar industry for so long, working across multiple suppliers and partners, is that you build these really good long-term relationships. From kind of, I was thinking back, the kind of cold mornings as young sales guys out there in our early 20s in a Greasy Spoon Cafe in South London, getting your food in you before you went out and made some sales calls throughout the day, and indeed learning from each other throughout the day. So now, we've kind of all got a bit older now, a lot older, into director level meetings, and still those same people still learning from one another. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in the industry for that long and have those relationships. So that's a bit of background about myself.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear that career journey. And I think, just picking up on your point about being in the industry for a long time, because I've been in the industry for 30 years as well. So I think it's around the same amount of time. And I think you're so right that there is a real sense of community in this industry, and you do tend to meet, the same people in different positions. And I think, a couple of things I want to pick up on there, because you mentioned when you first worked at Xerox, that you were then having to compete with the print manufacturers and, I guess sell to IT decision makers more so than, the traditional decision maker there. And I think we're seeing a similar, almost the same trend happening again in terms of that shift from MPS to IT services. So, based on that, amazing career history, what are the big changes that you've seen in the industry over that time, I guess from hardware to services and now to software with Vasion.
Yeah, and perhaps before I touch on the technology, it might be worth aligning to kind of what the customer's expectations have changed in us as well. And as you rightly say, you start off selling to facilities procurement, that then has gone to IT, but also we talk about IT, but IT is a really broad group of people. And typically print is around the desktop kind of IT side of things. Those people are doing the laptops and the peripherals. As we move into cloud, it's a totally different set of IT people. And we're now talking about infrastructure people. And this is a whole new step and stone that we need to get into to be able to have those conversations with the infrastructure people, because we're talking about ripping out their infrastructure in terms of print servers, etc. And so there's a need to get in to speak to those kind of individuals. I think the expectations have changed as well of the sales process. It used to be that it was very product kind of feature selling on fax and the back of brochures. It's then gone into a kind of a consultative sale, a lot of questioning of customers. And now I think we're in this phase of the challenger salesperson really needs to come to the forefront. Excuse me, because customers haven't got a lot of time. They don't want to waste time. Therefore, they're expecting a certain level of IT knowledge when they come into the meeting to start with. They're expecting you to have a knowledge about their specific market, their customers, who their competition is, the size of their organization, the structure of their organization, what their key competition are doing, their objectives and their finances. And they expect all of this before you even go into the meeting in the first place. And when in the meeting, absolutely, you've still got to ask open questions to get a greater understanding of what that company is all about, to really get to a point where they believe that you understand what they're trying to do in the short term and in the long term. But they also expect you to be the specialist in your field and to give them a level of confidence that you understand their current state and their future state and where that needs to go, and that the value you can take them on, and the journey you can take them on, the value that you offer, and really get to a point, particularly in software, where they want to see some of their recommendations in your products. As they come to you with new things, they want to see that taken on board and being developed, and then your software that's reflected within the product in the future. And so that's kind of been a big change that we need to know what we're talking about rather than being very open kind of questions. Almost challenge the customer. What about this? What about that? They want you to add value to them. I think also customers have become very impatient. Much like you or I, we're consumers as well. And if I order something online, it's not here within 24 hours, I start to think, well, hang on a minute, what's happening there? And so when customers actually make a decision on a strategy or on a product or particularly around software, they want to move forward quickly. And I think the days now of lengthy implementations of software projects, well into the hundreds, if not thousands of days to set up a professional service, to set up print management software or capture workflows, I think they're kind of long gone now. And the customers aren't going to accept that. And so they want to be able to turn the technology on within hours and days, not months and years. And I think there's also an expectation around flexibility, that they want to be able to scale up and scale down as needed, move things around as needed, but also flexibility in payment options to be able to only pay for those things that they use. And so as you reflect on technology that's required for that, then you align the customer expectations with the technology. And today, customers are really want to focus on their key challenges of cybersecurity or controlling and reducing costs, hybrid working practices. But they want the solution to be up and running quickly with the least amount of fuss, and they want flexible kind of payment options around that. But I do think the key thing to note is it's really exciting to be in the technology space, and because it's constantly changing, that keeps us learning. And as individuals, it's good to go to the office every day and kind of keep on learning. And I think the customers are pushing us more and more as well. Evidence would show that in the UK, the Nordics, and Benelux, we're some of the top digitized economies in the world. And so what I've also noticed over kind of my career is that we get often asked for things to be developed in the product that might be 2 or 3 years ahead of other regions. And so we often have that challenge in Europe to be able to get development into technologies that's required for the European market that may not make it into or may not be affected other markets until a few years' time. And so that evolution makes it exciting and makes it each day you come to work is kind of different. So that's a good place to be.
Yeah, I think that's some really great insight into not only how the industry has changed, but the sales process. Because I think, as you say, it's very much moved from speeds and feeds to business outcomes, and customers, as you say, are more demanding. And I think that analogy you drew in terms of the Amazon effect, I guess has really influenced B2B procurement and how they buy software solutions and services. And I think that's a big change that's needed in the industry in terms of how consultative selling and that whole sales process. So that was really interesting to hear some of that insight. So just to understand a bit more about Vasion, because it's recently rebranded, last year I think it was. And could you tell us a bit about Vasion, the company strategy, and how that fits in with the previous PrinterLogic brand and how that will be evolving in the future?
Yeah, so it's much more than just a name change between PrinterLogic and Vasion. Many people know the PrinterLogic brand. So we're 250 people software company now based in the US, and most of them are in development. We've added more products to the portfolio. In 2018, PrinterLogic acquired an enterprise content management system called MaxVault, and that had some excellent technology and took us deeper into customers, and indeed gave us some new customers. But the CEO of PrinterLogic Vasion saw that as a great product, but also saw the benefits of moving that along the same lines as we've done with PrinterLogic. We moved from an on-premise solution into a full cloud native software as a service offering to eliminate all of the print servers and all of the servers required to do both of these technologies. And so that's how that is developing. And so the company name is Vasion. There's two products in Vasion. There's the PrinterLogic product, the cloud-based, cloud-native print management, driver management product. And then we have the Vasion enterprise content management product that actually delivers a lot more than just that in terms of digital capture, e-forms, e-signatures, workflows, document management, and integration into storage systems, which we look at then integrate into any kind of storage system that might be out there to get the most appropriate storage costs for that, all under a cloud kind of SaaS model. Now, moving forward, the Vasion software stack will look like Vasion Print, Vasion e-signature, Vasion e-forms, all in the cloud. And so it can be very easily, quickly configured with that kind of no-code implementations for that. So it was being very forward-thinking, really, Vasion or PrinterLogic, in terms of moving to a serverless print management system. That was launched in 2017, so it was 5 years ago that they had the first cloud offering into the marketplace, and now we're doing the same with enterprise content management. And so we're looking to position that, and I think particularly with the impacts of COVID, that companies are really struggling to work out how do you manage things like hybrid working and off-network printing and zero trust networking. How do you do all of this stuff? Well, we've had options for this for quite a while and solutions for this for quite a while. And so all of this means that we're kind of in a really good position to be able to address the needs of customers today and move them to the next generation of cloud. And what we see is now is the cloud is moving into the early majority phase of the life cycle. And so we're looking for big growth as that moves into that phase. And so that's one of the reasons why I joined here, was I see there's big growth and big potential.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned there, PrinterLogic has been well established in the market for, like you say, since 2017 in terms of its cloud capabilities. And, I think also, during the pandemic, obviously a lot of businesses have accelerated their cloud adoption. So can you give some examples of customers that are, or perhaps already using PrinterLogic that maybe have adopted more of those capabilities, or actually any other customers that have just started using PrinterLogic as a result of the pandemic and their shift to the cloud?
Yeah, so without sharing specific names, we have customers of all shapes and sizes across different vertical markets. We're particularly strong, for example, in US government agencies because of our security, which is a key thing that they're looking at, right down to smaller companies. I just joined into a demonstration the other day for a company in Cameroon, 150 employees, 20 printers, and wanted to reduce their print costs and control of their print. But generally, so we were kind of all sizes of it. But generally speaking, we were very strong in multi-location organizations where they're kind of spread right around. And particularly in Europe, that means large financial institutions, retail, logistics, and healthcare. Well, there's multiple locations, quite complex environments to be able to work in. And our offerings are really aligned to the top three CIO priorities of digital transformation, cybersecurity, and of course, cloud migration is the key things that they're looking at. But being able to do all of that in this new hybrid working environment has been quite a challenge. And what we also see is coming into play is the shift of CIOs now looking at costs a lot more, and cost savings. So I think my observation is, and I speak to customers, that at the start of the pandemic, it was just get whatever you need to get things up and running, to ensure that business was continuing and business continuity was in place. But now, 18 months, 2 years on, they started to look at actually all this stuff's out there now. How do I bring control back into this again? How do I get control of this whole estate and the costings that are around that? And so we can help with controlling those costings. First of all, obviously, there's a huge ROI on taking out the print servers, the infrastructure out of an organization, and we've got calculators that show you how much the cost per server is and all of that sort of stuff. But there's also a lot of related costs that a lot of people may not even think about. For example, there's additional tools and licensing that is required for people to work from home around virtual private networks or VPN connections, which pre-pandemic, only about 30% of an organization would have the ability to use a VPN. But now, overnight, of course, with the pandemic, that went up to 100% as everyone was starting to work from home but needed access to the networks. And so that increased the cost a lot, and everyone's got them, and a lot of IT directors don't want everyone to have VPN access because of the cost of it. Well, with a cloud native SaaS solution like what we have, you don't need VPN access. And so that can, that's a cost saving that can be made as well, and actually control the cost. That's just one example of those kind of things that we can do. So on cost, that's something that we can address. If you look at digital transformation, everything we do, and as a big term, everything we do is around that. We look at our document e-flows, our workflows, our e-signatures, retrieving documents all in the cloud, that's all related to that. Security is a key one that customers are constantly asking us about, and are buying our product because of that. And it's a lot more than secure release. I think in the MPS world, it's about secure release. It's a lot more than that. Yes, we can do secure release, and we can work with security kind of often with printing and zero trust environments. But if you look at the print server itself, there's huge vulnerabilities around that. And this was highlighted just last July when hackers got through to the fairly boring thing of the print server and started accessing corporate networks through that. And it was called Printer Nightmare, was kind of the term that was given. And it seems to not be spoken about too much in the UK and across Europe. I don't know why that is. Perhaps customers don't want to shout from the rooftops that they've been hacked for whatever reason. But the initial response from Microsoft at the time was, well, don't print. And I think, oh, well, brilliant. Well, people still need to print. And many people on this call, of course, and are watching this podcast, their jobs, their income's relying on print. So you don't want that happening. It took days for them to get a patch to that, to fix that hack, and organizations needed to upgrade. And let me give you a prediction that won't be the last time that there'll be a cybersecurity attack through a print server. It will happen again. The good thing that, I guess, moving to a full SaaS cloud solution that we have is that did not affect PrintLogic customers. And so they will still have business continuity and still be able to do what they needed to do. And so, and what we've seen from that is one customer's come to us. I'll give you an example. One customer, there's been a number of people come to us because of that. And because, one customer had their email system knocked out for a number of days, going into weeks, because of that hack through the print server. And they're now come to us and are asking for us to install and now roll out our PrintLogic technology because of that. And then if you look at kind of the overall cloud migration thing that's going on, and everyone going cloud first, those people who weren't doing that are now catching up, and the COVID has speeded up that process for that to get done. And we've done some assessments on actual around MPS fleets. We've done our own. I've got some other research that goes on as well. And what's actually quite interesting is, what was interesting to me, come from my background, was that it could be as little as 34 to 40% of printing devices are actually on an MPS contract. that, and typically they're in the large organizations, pull printing scenarios. And where we have customers is actually the 60 to 70% that the smaller stuff, the single function devices, the wide format devices, the label printers, which is actually a growing marketplace as well. And we're kind of in a situation where we're looking after that stuff, the kind of the smaller single function devices out there. And then there's on-premise solutions working with the MPS contracts on site as well. So today, some large customers have both systems running. Well, what's now going to happen in the next step of cloud migration is that's going to move to a single platform for the whole estate. And so that's, I think, a prediction that will probably happen around that as well, because they don't want to have both things running. Obviously, I think also with cloud, customers is getting more switched on to this, and they're realizing that there's difference. There's cloud and there's cloud. There's a difference between these offerings, and the back of brochures and on websites can sometimes be misleading. It's not until you get underneath the hood of this stuff that you realize actually there's distinct differences between how some kind of cloud offerings work and then a full cloud native functionality within there. And so what also is important as well as people go on this journey is the ability to migrate when they need to. So some customers are still a little nervous in the UK and across Europe about making the full jump to a full cloud offering. They understand the benefits for it, but they're not quite ready yet. And then that's fine. And so an offering that we have is a virtual appliance offering with the same software code as the full SaaS offering, but they can run it on a virtual appliance, which means that they can have a lot of the benefits of the full offering now. It means that they're not tied into it. They can migrate when they want in 2 years' time, for example, and they're not tied into a 5-year kind of contract on that, and then have to buy another product at the end of it. And so we're thinking about taking customers on this journey to get them to cloud rather than just that big jump if they're not ready to be able to do that. And I guess probably in my mind as a last point, it's worth mentioning the carbon footprint side of things, which is a big thing. Our whole tagline around eliminate print servers and remove on-site infrastructure directly helps the reduction of their power consumption. You haven't got these servers running 24/7. And likewise, things like e-signatures really help as well. And so that means, what it means for us is I think we're in in my opinion, we're in a very good position to address these top issues that CEOs have, why people are buying our technology, whether it be digital transformation, security, the move to cloud, hybrid working, green initiatives, cost reduction. We can take the customer there from day one, or we can move them when they're ready to be able to move. And so I think in kind of summary, that's what I would like to position as being we can hit all of those things in terms of examples for customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, having analysed the cloud printing market for some time now, I think you're right. It can be quite a nebulous market. There's lots of different definitions of what cloud printing is. And I think it can be quite complex for customers to make that journey. Like you say, they're on different points of their general cloud journey. So how does print fit in with that? But I think some of the interesting points you raised there were around security. Definitely the print server is vulnerable. And we did some research around Print Nightmare, and the majority of organizations had suffered a security breach, or it had impacted their business. But I think, as you say, it was quite low profile in terms of awareness of that particular attack, and there will be more. As you say, more cyber attacks, not only on the servers, but on the devices as well. So I think security is absolutely a priority. And then, absolutely sustainability, we're seeing that sustainability is higher on the agenda now, and organizations are looking to their suppliers to help them reduce their environmental footprint, as you say. And, the server seems to be an easy win almost in terms of moving those servers into the cloud, and, the costs associated. We believe it's around $5,000 per server in terms of the running costs as well. So so I think cloud printing has a lot of benefits beyond just reducing the IT admin, I guess, burden of print management. And the other interesting point you mentioned was around the number of devices that are managed under MPS. I think that's really interesting, because that already is a gaping security hole. It's MPS isn't managing all the devices on the fleet, and it's interesting you say that will eventually converge to a single platform that can manage all devices in an organization. So it sounds like Vasion's got solutions across all of those areas wherever a company is on their cloud.
Yes. Yeah, and that's got even worse if you look at what's happened with everyone buying home office printers as well during COVID. That's more and more devices around, and so how do you manage all of that whole infrastructure? So, yeah, we certainly think we're good positioned and well positioned, which is why I joined here, why I came here. So,
yeah, and just to pick up on the capture side of the business, so you mentioned that was the other kind of product offering, and I think traditionally that's very much on premise, but moving to the cloud. So, can you just give a bit of insight into terms of where you see that product offering going and how organizations are shifting perhaps their legacy capture environment to the cloud?
Yeah, certainly. So I've been working in the capture space, as I said, probably 2003, 2004, right through, and then there's some really good software, on-premise software that's around, and they do a lot of good things in terms of scanning the documents, whether it's a physical document or electronic image, extracting data and moving it through a process. But I have observed that there's the customers seem to be in a predicament as to what to do all the time, and there's kind of two options available to them when they're looking for a good capture software. One is that they buy the most advanced software that they can for their particular document types. In essence, that means that they're paying a high ticket price to have all of that functionality to be able to automate as much as they can. However, only a certain percentage of documents that they've got need that high functionality, and therefore what they're doing is actually they've kind of overbought or spending too much money, if you like, on a solution they need for a certain amount of documents. The other side of that is that they settle for a lower kind of less functional product that will do the average amount of documents and therefore not fully automate everything. But then they have the additional cost of manual intervention within that process to add up to cater for that extra piece. And so there's always a payoff, is what I've noticed, between costs on one hand and level of automation on the other hand. And added on to that, the difficult challenge you have of trying to predict, we're going to buy something that's going to be here for 4 or 5 years. How do we predict our usage over 4 or 5 years? How much are we going to need? And what does the business look like in 5 years' time? Well, who knows? What is now changing with the services, the cloud services that are around, and the services that we're using with Invasion and our offering, is the ability to be able to customize the volumes and document types as needed. And so we can switch on certain things, we can switch off certain things, all kind of in real time. And we'll use the best OCR engines available at the time. And if that changes and someone else brings out a different one, we can easily switch to that one because it's all just cloud services. And we can differentiate between those different engines. And so, for example, if there's just a document that just requires, it's a basic form with text on it, that's a fairly simple thing that can go through one process. But if there's handwriting recognition required on a particular document, then we can subject that to a different process. And so we're very tight and in bed with the likes of AWS and Google and Microsoft, and we can have offerings across the board in there. So the quality and flexibility of the product is huge, and that becomes vitally important when integrating into things like robotic process automation. And the quality of that process at the back end is only as good as the quality of the data going into it at the front end. And so that's why it's hugely important to get that bit right. In addition to that, we observe, particularly in the office space, that the majority of customers and workflows that are trying to build today require multiple different applications in order to work. So if it was a application form, for example, that could either be a paper form that needs to be captured and scanned in, or it's a electronic document or form that needs to be captured. Well, for those bits to start with, you're going to need some capture software, or you're going to need some forms software to be able to create those forms. And then need to go through some workflows. You have some workflow software. It might then need to go out to be electronically signed. So it needs a signature software that's in there. It's a different process again. And then it be stored into a document management system and then retrieved somehow off the back end of that. And try to store documents in the most cost-effective ways of storing documents as well. So within that kind of one process, you could typically have 3, 4, or 5 different pieces of software kind of joined together for this whole process to be able to work. Yeah, the vision of Vasion then is that the whole process can be dealt with by one integrated suite from Vasion. And the functionality comes from a single product rather than multiple products from different vendors with different contracts and renewal rates on that. And because it's a serverless product in the cloud, that means that implementation can be so much quicker. I think back the hours that I've spent in the past with technical staff from my side, from the partner side and the customer, trying to decide what processing power and therefore server spec is required to do the amount of OCR that's required to hit so many documents in a certain time frame, to hit certain SLAs. I'm always glad to see the back of those days because we never really got it quite right, and there was always time delays on things, and it was very difficult to try and do that. Now, obviously, powering up a SaaS installation is much quicker. You've literally got as much processing power as you need, when you need it, and as much storage as you need when you need it as well. And so it's a huge kind of step forward in the capture marketplace.
Yeah, so just picking up on that, so have you seen interest from customers who are PrinterLogic customers that are managing cloud printing? Are they interested in the other side of it in terms of that sort of automation of documents and sort of digitization of paper-based processes? Are you seeing customers are using both platforms already, or is that something you're looking at evolving?
Yeah, so absolutely, it is an evolving one at the moment. So we're looking to evolve that in, but we've had customers we're having conversations with already are really excited about that. And they see the quality of the product we've got with PrinterLogic and want that for the rest of them, for the rest of the processes that are there. And they see it as a next step, a next progression, and trying to pull all of this together because it's all documents at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's either output of documents or input of documents, but it's all documents and workflows around that. And we're getting into some really big opportunities and competing against some of what I would call the big boys of enterprise content management around that as well. And so because a lot of them are still kind of on premise with some cloud offerings. But yeah, so the whole package is looking really good and customers are really excited about it. And they're actually pushing us to launch almost quicker than we want to launch with some of these products to get out there. So it's a really exciting time and a really good place to be. And good to have those extra conversations with those customers rather than just print. You go into a different level of conversation with these customers and get much tighter with them. Yeah,
because I think, at the end of the day, print is still very much a commodity in the market, and it's become very much focused on, the hardware, and there's very little to differentiate now on the hardware side. So it has to be, the opportunity is around the solutions and the software. And, companies like Vasion are so well positioned to be at that convergence of print and digital and, being able to extend those engagements to, digital transformation, digitization makes a lot of sense now, particularly now, as you say, that companies are accelerating their digitization initiatives, accelerating their move to the cloud and so on.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely scope, and there's definitely more scope in market share to be had in terms of cloud print. But then the real growth of the company will be in the going forward will be in the whole enterprise content management space and e-forms, e-signatures, and all of that good stuff that we spoke about, that whole workflow piece.
Yeah, so that's a real kind of high value opportunity there, isn't it? So based on that, you've given a sort of great insight into Vasion's strategy and its vision. But what's next for Vasion, in the coming year? Are there any other particular initiatives that you're looking at for 2022?
Yeah, well, we're really looking to continue our growth. We have good coverage in the US, but we need to continue that investment in EMEA and Asia Pac, so we're growing the team out. So the first thing is getting the right people as well. We've got great products, it's getting the right people there, and so we're growing with more sales, more marketing, more technical resources, and kind of support engineers. The PrinterLogic product will continue to develop onto more OEM manufacturers' products and tighter integration with that, with the control panel on their interfaces. And then we will look to integrate the Vasion ECM product as well as that goes. So we're really excited about launching the full Vasion offering into Europe. It's not here yet. We're looking forward into doing that. And that will start with things like e-signatures that will start being implemented into the PrinterLogic product as well. So you'll start to see some features of that being implemented into the core product. So we have big plans for growth, particularly across EMEA. And my personal objective is to get EMEA to be contributing more to the overall global business than it is today. And so we're looking forward to do that. I would say I've only been here for 5 months, and I've been so impressed with the the people at Vasion, they're awesome people, and the leadership and everything from senior leadership down to support engineers and everyone is really good. And these are really good guys, actually. And I'm learning an awful lot from them, because a lot of these people have come not from the print background, they've come from an infrastructure background. And so I'm learning an awful lot myself around that and what's important to the infrastructure IT people rather than just the print kind of people. As these markets are merging now, we need to be able to understand both of those. So exciting times definitely ahead.
Yeah, and I think, having had Vasion US on the podcast last year, it was really inspiring, because I think, like you say, Vasion is very much a software company, and I think that's where the real opportunity for innovation in the industry is it's really going to come from the software companies more so than maybe the hardware legacy companies that really need to partner with the software companies to get this growth. So no, it's really exciting times for Vasion, clearly, and look forward to hearing more about the progress over the coming year. So just on a final note, really, just you told us a bit about your career history at the beginning, but I'm asking all the guests, just on a light-hearted note, what their very first job was, and any lessons you learned from it.
Okay, my first job was first kind of part-time job, if you like, when I was, I guess, 16 or 17, working in a jean shop, selling, among other things, a lot of Levi 501s. They were the key thing at the time. Many people in my generation will know those. And before you ask, yes, I was very competitive and had a competitive streak, and very determined to be the top salesman of every Saturday that I went into that shop. In terms of kind of going back the full loop to kind of customer interaction, if you like, and trying to challenge the customer. At the time, the style of 501s actually didn't fit particularly well. And a lot of people, when you bought the right size, they actually weren't in particularly really good shape. And so the fashion at the time was 501s, but the thing was to buy an oversized pair and then belt them in was the kind of the style. And so I would tell people about this and say, no, you don't want your actual size, you go up a size and then belt them in. And tried always, ultimately they always bought the bigger pair because that was the style that they wanted rather than the size that actually fit them. And they all walked out as happy customers. So even from that point of time, I was kind of, quite determined to be the best salesman of the day, and also try and help customers out and challenge them in their views of what they thought was the right thing to do. And but they're all happy. And that was probably the start of my sales career.
No, that's really interesting. Well, thanks ever so much again, Simon, for joining me today. It's been really interesting to hear about Vasion's vision and strategy around cloud printing as well as capture. So thank you again for taking the time to join me today.
I appreciate it. And thanks for your time.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please go to quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.